Is that better? Okay. Okay, great. Let me open the chat as well so that I can see that. Feel free to interrupt if you have questions about anything. Also, feel free to post in the chat. Did y'all have a chance to install node.js? Yeah?
No, not yet.
Okay. And what about the Expo app on your phone? Okay. All right, so maybe Davion, if you could, let's see. Let me think about where to send you. Are you familiar with Node.js, Davion?
I haven't used it before.
Let's see. Hopefully it'll be fairly straightforward for you to install. I would suggest just following the installation instructions. Which operating system do you use, Davion?
I'm using a Windows.
Windows, okay. It doesn't really matter which one you download. This is automatically detecting that I'm running Linux, but it should show something different for Windows. So I'd suggest going to nodejs.org and trying to get Node.js installed. And you can do that while I'm setting things up. And then the other thing to install would be the Expo app on your phone. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, that's this middle icon here. I don't know. Well, it's not really. It's kind of blurry, unfortunately. But you should be able to search your app store for Expo and get that installed on your phone. Okay. So while you're doing that, Davion, I'll just set some things up here and maybe talk about React Native a bit. So like I said, I have not rehearsed this at all. I have given a few talks in the past about using React Native. And so I have, I've done this before, but it's been a while and things always change. reactnative.dev looks like the website for React Native. The idea of React Native is that you can write apps for your phone, but you can write them in such a way that, for one thing, they're cross-platform. So you write one bit of code and you can actually create both an Android app and an iPhone app, an iOS app. So that's a big benefit. The other benefit is that if you have any experience or want any experience with developing web apps, a lot of the technologies used in React Native are very comfortable and familiar for web developers. And if you are a web developer, you might be right at home. If you're not, and you learn React Native, well, it turns out you might have some web development skills and web app skills that you didn't necessarily intend, but just because a lot of the technologies are pretty similar, you can benefit that way as well. So that's why I tend to prefer React Native for apps. I'll mention also that React Native makes sense for certain kinds of apps. It makes a little bit less sense for other kinds of apps. And some examples of apps in which it makes a little bit less sense would be any kind of a game that requires a fast frame rate might not be a good fit. So in other words, how many refreshes of the display do you have per second if you really need a lot of performance on your device? React Native might not be a good fit. It might be okay, but that'd be one situation where I would hesitate to recommend React Native. Another example would be if you're making heavy use of the device features. So if you really need to dig deep into the sensors of the device and understand, like using the accelerometer on your phone, getting into some of the device specific features of your phone, that can be a little bit harder to do in React Native. I think for some of the standard and commonly used sensors and components on your phone, like maybe the camera or maybe the microphone, it can be easier to do that in React Native. because you only have to learn one set of tools, and it works on both platforms. But if you're doing anything relatively complex, then you might want to use a native app instead, which the way that works briefly is that you would write one app to target an Android device, and you would write that in either the Java programming language or the Kotlin programming language. And you would have to learn all of the different ways that you would display things to a user on that platform. You'd have to learn how to receive user input using that platform, and that's all specific to Android apps. That would be called a native Android app. And likewise, you'd have to learn a similar but different set of technologies to target iOS devices and build a native iOS app. And that would be written in the programming language Swift. You could write it in the language Objective-C, but nobody's really doing that these days. So you'd have to learn Swift, a different programming language, and you would have to learn a different set of ways of displaying things on the screen and receiving input from the user. So it's pretty nice to be able to learn something once and be able to target both platforms. So that's kind of why we're using React Native. And the other thing I would mention here is that Expo is a good tool to use when developing React Native, if possible. What Expo does, as you may have noticed from the fact that you have to install it on your phone, it brings your phone into the React Native development process. And what happens, as we'll see in a minute, is that we're going to be writing code on the computer, but we're going to be running that code on our phone through Expo. Expo provides a bridge from my computer to my phone so that I can see that code that I'm writing actually run on my phone. So it's kind of cool. Developing by using your own phone as part of your development environment. Davion, did you get Node installed yet?
Yes, I have Node and Expo installed.
Okay, great. Next thing is, do you have Expo installed within Node? So there's Expo, the app that runs on your phone, but there's also an Expo package in Node, and the way to install that would be npm install-g expo CLI. And I should mention here, I'm just typing this command into a command prompt. This is something, I guess, if y'all aren't familiar with, you can open up command prompt on a Windows machine. On a Mac OS, you can open up your terminal app. You should be given a prompt where you can enter commands like this in. Have y'all done that already, or do you have Expo CLI installed?
Oh, mine is currently installing on terminal.
Okay, great. Davion, are you able to open up a command prompt?
Yes, it's going right now.
Okay, great. And Noah, how about you?
I'm not sure what you're talking about, so probably
Okay.
not.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know if you heard me. Noah, I was asking if you would like to follow along with us and we can help you get this set up yourself, or whether you'd rather just watch.
Oh yeah, I can follow along if you want to help me out with that. That'd be great.
Sure. Are you running Windows?
Yeah, I'm running Windows.
Okay. So go to your, I guess hit your Windows button on your keyboard and type command and see if command prompt is one of the options there.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Great. And Blaine, you're still here too. Are you following along okay? Okay, maybe Blaine's just lurking. Okay, so were you able to open up the command prompt, Noah? Okay, and try typing npm install, like I have on the screen, npm install -g expo-cli into your command prompt. Davion, were you able to install expo CLI?
It's still going. It hasn't gotten to the new patch version box yet.
Okay. And George, were you able to get that installed yet?
It's giving me an error on terminal. It says permissions denied because I don't have like permission to access the file, so I think it has something to do with my administrator settings, but I'm gonna check that.
Okay, and did you say you're on Mac OS?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One thing that you could try is to prefix your command with sudo, sudo.
Okay.
So try that and see if that works. And Noah, were you able to type that command in yet?
Oh yeah, I was able to type it in. It's doing something now.
Doing something. All right, good. Okay. I guess y'all let me know when you when the command finishes, whether it was successful or whether it failed. I'm going to, this might not be very familiar to you if you don't spend much time on the command line, but I'm going to change directory here. So I've got a directory that I've created called code. This is like a folder on your hard drive. And I'm going to make a, let's see, I'm going to go to my Scratch directory. I have an Expo example already, but I think I'm going to wipe that out so that I can create a new one. So I just changed directories to this, and now I'm going to create a new Expo project. And I just need to remember how to do that. I'm going to wait for y'all, but I'm just going to remind myself how to actually do this in Expo. So what we did, by the way, when we said npm install -g expo CLI, is we made it possible to run an expo command. And to just make sure that actually works, I'm going to ask it what version it is. And it gave me a reasonable version number instead of saying could not find command expo. So that means this is working. If that doesn't work, the thing to try would be to prefix the command with npx, which should also work. And we have the same version in both cases. Anybody finish the npm command yet?
It stopped
Yeah.
doing the loading thing. I didn't check.
Okay.
Yeah, mine installed successfully.
Okay. George is finished. Davion is still loading.
It gave me the version number.
Awesome. Okay, so you're all good to go. Noah, how about you?
Mine's just kind of like twitching out, saying "warn deprecated" a bunch of times.
Okay. I think I might have gotten some of those as well. Yeah, so you're probably en route to getting that installed. Okay. So now, and we'll catch you back up, Noah. Let us know when you get that installed. But I'm going to just remember what I need to do here. So I said expo-help. And
I got it installed.
you got it installed. Great. And can you say expo-version and get something reasonable?
Yeah, I got it.
Awesome. Okay, I think what we want to do is say expo init. So we're going to create a new expo project with expo init. Expo init, and we can call this like React Native example. You can call it whatever you want to. And it's asking me what kind of workflow I want. And I'm just going to go with blank. I think this will be the easiest to understand. All right, and then it's going to install all the dependencies that it needs. This is similar to what we saw above when we said npm install -g expo CLI. It's doing the same kind of thing, but it's doing it in the background. So we don't necessarily see all of the output, but it's the same kind of thing. So this might take a while. Okay, this is something I don't expect that you will see. But it has to do with my own setup on this machine. And I got this message, your project is ready. Anybody else get that far yet?
No, I think mine's bugged out on the expo init part.
What does it say? I think you're muted, Davion.
It said it didn't recognize it, but I'm gonna try again.
When you said an expo version successfully, did you have to say npx expo version?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
I mentioned there, some of you might have to, if you can't say expo version successfully, you might have to say npx expo version. Or did you have to prefix your command with expo?
No, I did expo version the first time and it worked.
Okay. But then
I gotta
expo,
type out, oh, I'm sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
I have to type out the React Native example too, right?
Yes. And you're muted again.
I'm sorry. I probably,
I heard, I'm sorry, and then you muted yourself halfway through.
I'm gonna try it again and see if it works this time. I think I probably misspelled something.
Okay.
Mine says my project is ready.
Great. Noah, how about
Mine
you?
as well. It says
Yours is
as
ready.
well.
Okay, great.
Okay, I got the blank and blank TypeScript.
Okay, so pick blank and hit enter.
Okay, expo blank template. Oh, it's going.
Okay, awesome.
It
So
said
it'll probably,
installing JavaScript dependencies.
great. It'll probably be done in another minute or so. Okay, and then it tells, so you can catch up to where we are and let us know if we're going too fast. But so it gives us the commands that we need to actually start the project. And so I'm just going to follow that. CD React Native example, and then npm start. Okay. And so this is doing some stuff, including it opened a web page up for me. And it also displayed a big QR code in my terminal. So this this QR code, there's one on the web page and there's also one on the terminal. I just need to scan that with, with my phone. And at least on iPhone, I don't know what you need to do with Android, but at least on iPhone, you just open your camera app and point your camera at the QR code, and it'll prompt and say, do you want to open this app in Expo? And you say yes. So I'm going to do that now. And I have I don't know if you can read that, but it says Expo would like to find and connect to devices on your local network. And so I'm going to allow that and say okay.
Okay, it finished installing the JavaScript dependencies.
Okay, great. So Davion, if you will follow those instructions and say CD to React Native example and then npm start, you should get to this point. All right, Nehemiah's back. Welcome back, Nehemiah.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, we're getting underway.
Whenever I enter in a CD React Native example, npm start, it says the system cannot find the path detected.
Okay. You're on Windows, right, Noah? Do, let's see, say CD space and type React and then hit dash and then hit tab and see if something comes up.
Yeah, I got something. It just finished the rest of the name, I guess.
Okay, so hit enter there. And now say npm start. Did that get it started for you, Noah? Okay, great. So George, Davion, were y'all able to open your project up in Expo?
Yes, it just opened for me.
Okay, great. George, how about you?
Yeah, I think so also. It says open up app.js to start working on your app.
Yeah, that's what you should see. Open up app.js to start working on your app. Great.
I see the barcode and it just opened up a window.
Okay, so Davion, use your phone's camera to scan the QR code, and then it should prompt you whether you want to open up the app in Expo. And Noah, do you see a QR code yet?
Oh yeah, I went ahead and scanned it.
Okay, great. So after you scan it, it takes maybe 30 seconds to build the app, but then you should see what George said a second ago, which is open up app.js to start working on your app. I just have a big white screen with that line of text in the middle. And let me know if you see that or if you see something else.
Yeah, I got that string of text.
Great. Davion, were you able to open that in Expo, and is it building now?
It said something went wrong.
You muted halfway through again. I heard
I'm
it
sorry.
says something
It said
went
something
wrong.
went wrong on my phone.
Okay. Let's see. Does it give you any more information?
No, it just asks me to go back to the home page or refresh. It sends me to Expo. It just doesn't load anything.
Okay, so Expo is telling you something went wrong. Do you see any output in either your terminal window, your command prompt, or in the web page?
No, it's the same as yours right now.
Okay. Is there like a try again button in your Expo app?
That's what I've been doing so far, just refreshing it.
Okay, and it doesn't seem to help. Okay. So what you can do instead, Davion, this is a little bit different, but you can try clicking on maybe run in web browser might be your best bet. There's a few different options here. You won't be able to run on iOS simulator because you're not running on a Mac. You have to run on a Mac to run an iOS simulator. But you could do an Android device simulator. The problem with that is that you have to install a bunch of stuff and set up a bunch of stuff to get that working, and it's kind of a pain, and it takes a while. So you could try this run in web browser, and that would be a way you would not use your Expo app on your phone anymore. You would have to use a web browser to actually run your code. I have not tried this. I don't actually know how it works, but it might be worth trying if you can't get Expo to work on your phone.
Okay, I clicked it. It says attempting to open project in a web browser, so now I'm just waiting.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, let me know how that goes. So what we can do here is, if I go back to my, this is just my own location of this code that I just created with Expo. If I change directory into that directory, then I can see there is a app.js file here. And basically this message that you can see, those of you who have this running on your phone, it says open up app.js to start working on your app. That's where the source code of this app actually is. And so if you have a preferred text editor or development app that you want to use, you can use that. I use Vim for text editing, or Spacemacs is another one that I use. I don't expect that anybody would necessarily use those things, but you could open up app.js and like, what is it? Notepad, for example, would be one tool that you could use to open this. But basically you just need to open this up as a text file somehow, and you'll see code that looks like this, including this line here. So if I actually change to this, I could say, add a little bit of text here, and I can save. And as soon as I save, my phone will say refreshed, and it'll notice that I added some new text to this text element here. And I can see that now my app on my phone is actually updated to include that new text that I added. So this is part of the cool thing about Expo and having your phone as part of your development environment. Expo will notice any changes that happen to the source code, recompile the app as it needs to so that your phone sees the latest source code. And I guess I'd love to see if y'all have success at doing that. And that might mean I need to help you with finding a text editor or something like that, especially Noah, if you've never done any programming before. But let me start with George. Were you able to make a change to app.js and see those changes reflected in your phone?
I opened a new terminal, like tab, and I went to ls and I see app.js. So would I call the cd command on app.js?
Something that might be more familiar to you, I happen to know this because I used to use Mac OS, is if you said open space dot, enter, like open space period, that'll open up a Finder window, and that might be more comfortable to you. Noah, how about you? Have you had any success changing the contents of app.js?
No, I have not.
Okay. Noah, try opening an Explorer window, like a Windows Explorer, to see your folders. And see if you can find, it might even just be in that first folder that you're in by default. See if you can find the React Native example folder that Expo created for you.
No, I wasn't able to find it.
Okay. Go back to your command prompt and see the last prompt that you had. Like for mine, for example, it tells me what directory I'm in right now. And I'm curious what yours might tell you about which directory you're in.
It just says like my user, and then like my user profile, and then slash React Native example.
your user, then your user profile. Is it like C:\/ something?
Yeah, it says like C:\/ users slash Noah D slash React Native example.
Oh, are we back? Sorry about that. My internet connection is apparently unstable right now. Noah, if you actually highlight the C:\/ users slash Noah D slash React Native example, I think you can maybe right click on that and copy it, and then you should be able to paste it into your Windows Explorer address bar to get to that directory. Are you able to see that in Windows Explorer yet?
It just said that no results were found.
No results were found. Interesting. Okay, let me circle back to you in a second. Davion, were you able to get the web version of this app running?
No, the web isn't opening up either.
Okay. Okay. Davion, I wonder if you held your phone up to the camera, if I might be able to see if the error is telling you anything that I might recognize. And I see your mouth moving, but you're muted.
I'm pulling it back up.
Okay. And y'all feel free to just stay unmuted if that's any easier. It doesn't sound like any of y'all are in noisy environments, so I don't think it would be too distracting for everybody. If that saves you any trouble, you can just stay unmuted. Okay, so Noah, I'm wondering, maybe would you mind sharing your screen, and then I can try to walk you through where to get to?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay, let me give you permission to do that. 1 second. Okay, you should be able to share.
I'm sorry, I have no idea how to do this. I've just never had to share my screen before. I guess. Are you able to see this?
There we go. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that yellow manila folder icon, that's like the third one over on your bottom bar.
Is this it?
Yeah, and yeah, that should be fine. There we go. Let me see here. Yeah, what happens if you click where it says search results and downloads? Huh. Click the down arrow kind of to the right of that. Okay, hit backspace and then try to paste in your folder.
Just this right here.
Uh-huh. There we go. Great. Okay, so the fifth thing down that just says app, that's your app.js file. Windows Explorer is hiding the .js from you, but you can tell that by the fact that it says the type is a JavaScript file. So what we want to do is actually open that up in a text editor of some sort. And so you could probably right click and say, you might be able to say open with or edit. Either one of those might work. Okay, so it opened up Notepad for you. So now try making some change to the text that's inside of those text tags. It's about the 8th line down. And save the file and see if you can see the results on your phone.
It doesn't seem to have changed anything on my phone.
Ah, lame. Oh, did you save? Try going either Control S or File Save.
Oh, there we go.
Nice. Okay, so George and Noah are squared away here. Davion, did you get your phone? Okay, let me see that. Something went wrong. Network response timed out. Interesting. And this is the Expo app that you see, right?
Yes.
So there are potentially some issues that you can run into with networking, which can be kind of a pain to figure out. Davion, are you like in your dorm room? Are you at home or what?
I'm in my dorm room. I just had gotten the Wi-Fi fixed like 30 minutes ago, hour ago. We had a Wi-Fi problem on this floor, and they just fixed it.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Is your phone connected to the same network that your computer's connected to?
Yes.
It is. Okay. What if you look in like Noah, I'm going to stop your share and share mine instead. Okay. Davion, on my screen, do you see this link right here that says exp:// and then has some numbers after that?
Yeah.
What are the numbers that yours says?
10, 150, 0, 155, 19,000.
Okay. That seems reasonable. So it's possible that your dorm has disabled, like prevented you from doing things like this. They might actually be preventing any traffic going to your computer that way. What's happening is that your computer is hosting a server, an Expo server, and your phone is trying to connect to it. And it might be that your network security policy in your dorm is not letting traffic like that pass for security reasons. So that's my guess as to why this is not working for your Expo app on your phone. There are some ways around that, but that would be a little bit more involved. That's something where I would say, like, if you want to get this resolved, maybe come back to the App Lab another time, or even potentially after this is over. Nehemiah asks if a VPN would work.
Ooh, I do have my
Potentially.
VPN on.
Yeah, well, actually, is the VPN on both devices or off on both devices? Good thought, Nehemiah.
Yeah, I'm actually in class right now, so I can't say too much, but yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Davion, you seem to be frozen from my perspective. I wonder if he turned his VPN off and got disconnected. Yeah, and now he's gone. Oh, and he's coming back. All right. Did you get bounced?
Yeah, it gave me the same response. Nothing changed.
Ah, bummer. Okay, I was hoping that was it. So is your phone connected to a VPN?
No.
And is your computer connected to a VPN?
I just turned it off. It's not.
Okay. Hang on, wait a second. So you just turned it off. So go back to your terminal, your command prompt, and hit Control C to cancel, like to close that that instance of React. What is
Yes,
it? That instance of Expo. And then just hit up and enter to run it again. Basically, you're just starting it fresh.
all right, we'll try it again.
I assume that Noah is still here. Maybe he just turned his video off, or maybe he stepped out for a second.
Okay, no, it's just giving me the same response.
Ah, that's a shame. I really thought that would actually work. Okay, yeah, I guess maybe if you want, we can work with you about that offline and just come back some other time. We're open. I mean, you may have seen applab.unc.edu. We have open hours listed there. And we're generally here from, I think, 11 to 7, Monday through Friday. So feel free to come back some other time and we'll see if we can get that working for you.
All right, I'm gonna just sit and watch and spectate.
Sounds good. Okay. So I think Noah and George have both been able to make a change to the source code and see that change reflected on your phones. And let me walk through now what this code is actually doing so that you can get a sense of it. This might make some intuitive sense to George with his programming experience, but there might also still be some new concepts here. If George, have you used React.js at all?
No.
Okay. So these first 3 lines are importing some of the things that we need from elsewhere. And so these are all package names that we got through npm. And then these are specific things that we're importing from those packages. There are some details here about whether we have braces around them or not. This React is called the default export of this package. So we don't actually need any braces there. But these other ones are named exports of their packages. So we do need braces there. In other words, status bar is just one of the things that Expo status bar exports. But React is sort of the thing, the default thing that is exported from the React package. It's actually not the only thing, but it is the default thing. Likewise, we're getting some things from React Native from that package. The main thing that we're doing is we are exporting our own thing from this module, and this is our app.js module, which is our entry point for React Native. React Native is going to see that we have an app.js file and look for a default export from that file and use that as the entry point into your app. So that's what we see here. We have a function app, and what this function does is it returns this code. We'll get back to what that means in just a second, but this is really the heart of your app. This is this code right here, which is being returned, is the thing that we're actually seeing in Expo. And we also finally have a styles. This is our style sheet that we're creating that has some rules about how to actually display things. We'll get into what flex means in just a minute, but we're telling it what background color to use. You know, you can try to change this. This is in the RGB coordinate. In other words, red is F, green is F, blue is F, and this is the code for white. But if we wanted to change this to like green, for example, that would be RGB. So green would be the second thing. So we could say 0F0, and that would be green. And if I save that, my background color is now green. And I can undo and get back to white if I want to. And then I have some information about how do I align the items, how do I justify the items. And basically what this is doing is justify content center is saying that I want that line to appear in the center vertically. And align items is saying I want it to appear in the center horizontally. So that's what those two things are doing. And we could actually change that to be like justify content flex end. We can put it at the bottom. And you can actually, maybe it's even hard to see because it's so close to the bottom of your screen that it's sometimes hard to see. So I can make that change. I can see the effect on the phone. I can do a similar thing with align items. My particular text is wide enough that it's taking up everything, so I can actually make that text smaller, and then I can see more of the effect of what align items is doing. But I can make all these changes, and this is part of the beauty of having an Expo workflow set up, is that you can experiment and play around and see what the effect of various changes is. Just really quickly, you get a really fast feedback loop going where you can quickly see what the result is. And this makes it easier to explore what the options are and to explore and iterate towards something that actually looks good. But yeah, that's kind of how we use our workflows. We try something out, we save a file, and then we look to see how does it actually look on the phone. Any questions about that so far?
I have one question about the app function. So I'm learning Java in 210, but would the app function kind of serve a similar purpose to like the main function whenever starting a Java program?
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. Java's convention is that your main entry point into your code is a main function that you define, or maybe a main method of a class. I guess it would be static void main or something like that. But yeah, it's a convention that Java uses to say, this is the entry point, this is where we start executing the code that you write. And it's the exact same thing going on here, where the convention is a little bit different. This is export default function app, but we need to do that so that React Native will know where to start our code. And we can actually do this. It doesn't actually matter whether it's called app, because the default export doesn't technically have a name that matters. The name, for example, this default export of React, we can name it whatever we want. We could name it My React or anything else, and we are providing the name here, so that a name doesn't actually matter. But we can, as long as we say export default function, that's the entry point.
Thank you.
Okay, so then to break this down a little bit more, lines 6 through 11 here, app is a function, and a function returns something. And in this case, what we're returning is these 4 lines here. What this represents is, it's a lot like HTML. Noah, do you know what HTML is?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. How about you, Davion?
Isn't it like editing code?
HTML is the code that browsers use to like, it's basically how to tell a browser what to display. So like, for example, here, we can actually look at the code of this web page, and this is HTML. So this might be kind of hard to see considering my fonts are kind of small, but we can see like this right here. This is an H1 tag. Let me see if I can make that bigger. Okay. Oops. All right, so this is our H1 tag. And the only thing in it is this introduction. So the way this works is there's a less than sign and a greater than sign delimit a tag. And so this is an H1 tag. This is the opening H1 tag, and every tag has to be closed. So this is the closing H1 tag, and that would be with less than / H1 greater than. And anything in between the opening tag and the closing tag is the children or the contents of that tag, of that element. The opening tag and the closing tag together indicate an element. So this is an H1 element that we're adding to our document. Each element can have attributes. And right now we have two attributes. We have an ID attribute, and the value is docusaurus, whatever that means. And there's a class attribute whose value is post header title. So altogether, this opening H1 tag, closing H1 tag, and together they represent an H1 element whose contents are introduction and which has a couple of attributes. Everybody with me so far? Okay. So that's HTML, and this is the language of the web. This is, like I was saying earlier, one of the reasons that it can be nice to use React Native for mobile app development is that a lot of the technologies that are used are very familiar to web developers and very similar to what you'll find in web development. And that's what we see over here on lines 7 through 10. This looks a lot like HTML. It's not exactly HTML, but it's pretty close. So it turns out in HTML, there's no such thing as a view tag or a view element. That's something that React Native gives us. And we are importing that from React Native. But you can see the syntax is very similar. We have an open angle bracket, aka less than sign. We have a close angle bracket, aka greater than sign. We've got our opening tag and our closing tag. We have a couple of content. Actually, we have an attribute for this tag, style equals this thing, which I'll talk about in a second. And we have a couple of elements that are children of this element as well. We have a text element here, which has some text inside of it. We have our closing tag for the text element, and then we have also a status bar element. This slash greater than sign indicates that it does not have any children, so it's sort of self-closed. It doesn't need a separate closing tag. And it too has an attribute, style equal auto. So the last thing I want to say about this markup here is that it looks like HTML. One of the main differences is that you can use these curly braces. And what this will do is get out of the mode of talking about markup and escape back into the mode of talking about JavaScript code. And so what this is doing here is we're saying we want to give this view element a style attribute, and the value for that style attribute is actually provided by some JavaScript code. That is going to be defined by the styles and then the container property inside this. I lost you again. All right, wait, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I just got a note that says connection unstable. All right, we created a style sheet, and that style sheet that we created has a container property on it, and that's what we're passing as the value of this style attribute. So that's how that works. A couple of things that I'll mention are that in HTML, we say attributes, like this ID is an attribute and this class is an attribute. In React land, which is where we are right now, this is a React Native project and it's using React.js to do what it needs to do. This is called a prop or property rather than an attribute. So that's just a terminology difference there. The other terminology thing is that this is called a component rather than an element. And so we are importing the view component from React Native, and we're using that here to define a view component. That makes sense so far? Okay. I suspect this will be more natural for CS students since you've seen some code. But anyway, that's what we're returning. So let me see here. What can I do next? we can talk about, so there's, the documentation for React Native is pretty good. I think it'd be a good place to get started, just understanding some basics about React Native. One of the things I want to get to, I think within a couple of pages, it's going to start talking about style. The documentation has changed since I last looked at it. Maybe design style, there we go. So the styles here are going to be pretty similar to what you would find again in web development using CSS or cascading style sheets. CSS is what everybody uses on the web to style their pages. And what we see in React Native with its style sheets is very similar to CSS. So there again, we have some overlap between web development and React Native mobile development. There are more details here about this. One of the differences here that it points out is that in React Native, we would say background color in a camel-cased fashion. In other words, this is all one word and we have a capital C. But in CSS, we actually do kebab case, which is separating words with dashes. So that's one syntactical difference, but it's still the same concept in either case. So this would be some examples about how to use the styles, and an important thing about styles is that, okay, so you can set height and width, but what I was wanting to get to was Flexbox. Flexbox is it's a newer approach to laying things out in the web. Layout is basically the problem of saying, where does each thing go on the page? And so we saw already, we saw Flex 1, I didn't really talk about what it was, but we also saw align items and justify content. And these would be style rules that affect the layout of our components on the screen. And so maybe you played around with those like I did and you saw various places where that text was displayed. And that would be the text, the layout is changing. But Flexbox is what actually controls this in React Native. This is something that you can use in the web, and I actually recommend anybody who's doing web development to use this as much as possible because it's a simpler way to go compared to with what came before. I actually started doing web development back in probably late 90s. And back then, the state of the art was to have tables nested inside of tables and to have spacer GIFs, which were these transparent GIFs that you could give a hard height and width to, and they could say, okay, well, I want this text to start 50 pixels over, so the first cell on my table is going to be the spacer GIF with a width of 50 pixels, and then my second cell on my table is going to be the text, and it was a nightmare to try to lay things out in the web. Flexbox is a lot simpler. Sorry, Nehemiah, did you want to say something?
I know I didn't. I just got out of the class. My bad. I just was
Okay.
to turn my camera on.
No worries. So this Flexbox is far simpler than the ways that have come before. It's a relatively new standard on the web. It's only maybe 5 years old, if that, from being kind of in the mainstream where all browsers support it. But it's the only way to lay things out in Flexbox, and so, or sorry, in React Native. So if you're doing React Native, you have to learn Flexbox. And the good news is that it's not that hard to learn. There's some interesting things about it. I actually have a lecture that I talked about Flexbox, which you might find useful. That would be here. This is my website for software engineering, comp523.cs.unc.edu. I talked about layout here and here, September 14th and 16th. And you can see my slides and stuff here as well. One of the resources that I like to point people to is Flexbox Froggy if you're learning Flexbox layout. This is a fun way to learn it. So your objective is to write the style rules that you need, the CSS rules, to get the frog to be on the lily pad. So it's a kind of a fun way to learn some of the basics of Flexbox and how to do that. But yeah, so that's laying things out. One thing that we haven't talked about yet is how do we actually accept user input and make things change in response to that input. We're not going to have time to do that justice today. I've got to run in just a few minutes, 5 or 6 minutes here. But briefly, that's what React does. That's specifically the problem that React is designed to solve. And I suspect these React fundamentals would be a good place to read up on here in this documentation. It's talking about JSX. This is the, anytime we have these angle brackets inside of our source, that's JSX. And what that means is you can embed XML, which is a type, it's similar to HTML. You can embed XML in the source code of your JavaScript. So it stands for like JavaScript plus XML. And that's what that is if you see that term. Components, we'll see how to define our own components later. Right now we've defined a component for app, but you can define your own components that accept props and do different things based on different props. We saw props already. That was what these attribute kind of things are in JSX. And state is what we have not seen yet. So state is how things actually change. Things change in React by changing the value of state. And we'll see that maybe next time we could pick up there and start talking about state and start making our component dynamic to where it's actually going to display something different depending on what the state is. What I might do is, well, let me stop and say, are there any questions so far?
I wanted to ask, could you possibly send the docs for that into the chat? That link for that.
Sure. Yeah, so good idea. Let me share this in the chat. This is the Flexbox. Flexbox Froggy. Some notes on layout. And some notes on React. Yeah, good idea. Other questions? Do y'all feel like you could, I guess apart from Davion, who's having problems with the Expo, do y'all feel like you'd be able to get to this point if you were on your own?
Yes.